welcome back. Welcome to Wednesday. I can now put cards up in my video, so pray for me as I try and figure out how to actually do that. I had a good but exhausting work week. No death visits, so that was nice after July and the beginning of August were not nice to my patients. As usual, this is YouTube, so if you like the content, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. I'm not sure how I feel about hiding or deleting hate comments, but I'm here to ask that you don't engage with them. Now, if you're having a bad day and just want to go in on some idiot, don't let me stop you. Lord knows, I've had my moments. But I will gently remind you that engagement is what they are after. On the Armchair Experts podcast, Harry made it clear that if women knew all the stuff that went along with marrying royalty, they wouldn't want to be a princess. I think history has shown this to be true. Marrying into the senior levels of the British royal family as a female is notoriously not fun. It feeds into a larger narrative where the press, both in the US and UK, target a specific woman, whether that be Marilyn Monroe or Princess Diana, Britney Spears, Meghan Markle, the list goes on and on. They hound them until something awful happens. Then there is this period where everything resets. The press write articles about how it's everyone else's fault and cry about how poorly women are treated, right up until they pick another victim. Then it's game on again. The press as a pack will come down hard on anyone who dare points out that the cycle is continuing. Now, much of this relates to the emergence of our modern news cycle and an overwhelming level of misogyny. I will say again that marrying into the senior level of the royal family is not a fun time, and unless you are willing to play the game, don't expect the family you married into to protect you. And even if you do play the game, but the monarch or an heir is in trouble, they're going to run you over anyway. Let's look at Diana and Fergie. These two ladies really mark the start of the modern era of royal coverage. They were close in age despite their husband's 11-year age gap, and seemingly had a relationship despite the press trying to tear them apart at every opportunity. They had much in common. Their husbands were away most of the time. Fergie alleges she only saw Andrew 40 days a year for the first 5 years of their marriage. They would meet for weekly lunches during their respective early years in the palace. I don't really trust anything that comes out of Fergie's mouth nowadays, but if you Google photos of the pair, you can see that there was a relationship behind the scenes. Something I will note is obviously not apparent in the few photos we have of Kate and Meghan together. Now, the 80s was quite the decade for Charles and Diana, starting with their well-received, much-publicized wedding, followed quickly by the birth of an heir and the hugely successful Australian tour which catapulted Princess Diana to global superstardom. I would argue Charles and Diana were at their peak in the early part of the mid-80s. The heir versus spare narrative was playing out in their favor, with Diana winning out against Fergie. Now, you need to remember the first part of that statement. A well-publicized and received wedding, followed by a birth of a son and a hugely successful Australian tour. It will sound familiar. Charles could not handle the popularity of his wife, and the marriage began to deteriorate in the late 80s. By the end of the decade, the press had gotten wind of it, and the pair were looking glum and angry in public. Unlike previous decades where obvious marital trouble was handled with kid gloves by the newspaper-based press, Charles and Diana were the first couple to truly face the onslaught of the tabloids feasting on their misery. As we enter the 90s, Charles and Diana received a brief reprieve when Fergie and Andy divorced in 1992. They were soon back dominating the headlines when they announced their own separation in December of that year. As the marriage continued to fall apart publicly, there was a new focus. Protect Charles, protect the heir. The Camilla Gate tape scandal would occur in 1993, where it would become untenable to deny that an affair took place. The mission then became to try and destroy Diana's image and credibility. Diana became literally hunted by the paparazzi in ways she had not before. Importantly, her Panorama interview with Martin Bashir would air in 1995, immortalizing Diana's perspective on her marriage falling apart. The mid-90s would not be kind to Diana, with some promoting her good deeds and continued charity work, while most press outlets continued to hound her. Tabloids were putting out daily hit pieces and headlines in numbers we would not see until Diana's future daughter-in-law Meghan Markle entered the scene. The ever-increasing need for more would lead to ever-increasing prices for paparazzi photos of the princess. with a photo of her and Dodi kissing fetching up to $6 million a month before they would both die in a car crash, being chased by paparazzi. No doubt motivated by the high price photos of the two together would net on the tabloid market. I think it's important to note that despite Diana being all of 19 years old and marrying the crown prince, she received no assistance from the family. They allowed her to flounder, and then were surprised when the world focused on her after the Australian tour. When Diana outshined her heir husband, all bets were off. Instead of embracing a woman who brought much-needed life and energy to a stale and standoffish institution, the family panicked and protected their heir despite his bad behavior. This should all sound familiar to you. It's also notable during this time when it's so obvious what palace protection looks like. It becomes so much more obvious that Diana and then Meghan did not receive it. Now, this one is a hard one because, to be honest, 99.98% of the shit Camilla gets, she deserves. But I would like to note that Charles has once again benefited from the press's outward sexism and our own internalized misogyny. I can't tell you the number of times on Twitter and other social media outlets where people go, oh yeah, Prince Charles is the worst, but God, Camilla, that home-wrecking, ugly, blah, 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 it goes on. All I'm trying to say here is don't fall for more protect Charles bull. Camilla sucks, but he does too. Despite Camilla reportedly being hated by the Queen, Charles has gone out of his way to protect her. They even gave her PR push a name, Operation Mrs. PB. Also, we really need to think of a male version for homewrecker. Tell me your ideas in the comments. The next woman to marry into the senior level of the firm is, of course, Kate Middleton. It's important to remember that early press coverage of her was pretty rude. She was called what are bluntly sexist nicknames. Her phone, along with other members of the royal family, was hacked. And she was often hounded by paparazzi, especially as rumors of an engagement swirled. But some of the coverage was warranted. Kate really did wait around for William to marry her, 10 years and multiple alleged infidelities on his part. The Queen really did want her to get some kind of job before marriage. Note the author on that Mail article. Could you even imagine Katie Nicholl writing something mildly critical of Kate now? Like any woman about to marry into the royal family, her privacy was invaded. Comments were made about her appearance and weight. Unlike her future sister-in-law, Kate Middleton received palace protection almost immediately after she married in. After the press bounce from their wedding faded, the palace was eager to threaten outlets legally or issue strongly worded statements against negative Kate articles. Now, the perceived good treatment from the family towards Kate after marriage was seen as them learning from Diana. I would argue they had actually learned nothing, but unlike Diana, Kate was willing to play the game with the press and with the family. I'd also argue that most of the time the palace defended her, they were defending William too. And of course, here enters Meghan Markle. Now, Meghan is different from this list of women in a lot of ways. First, she is an American with a black mom. Secondly, she has a public work history before marrying into the firm. And third, she is marrying a spare, not an heir. Although the fact that Harry is William's only sibling, along with William's children being too young for the press to attack, makes things a bit murkier. Now, the first warning shots come when Harry makes a public statement condemning racist articles his then-girlfriend Meghan had been receiving. This kind of statement, especially when they were not yet married, was unprecedented. It showed that Harry was going to be protective of Meghan in a way the UK press wasn't used to see royal men protect even their spouses. Now, this part gets a little murky because there are two things that are true, even though they sound contradictory. The first is that Meghan Markle received racist coverage from UK tabloids from the second her relationship with Harry became public. The second is that Harry and Meghan's wedding was well received and very popular both in the UK and globally. So we had the Diana connection being set up. An engaging, charismatic woman has just married into the royal family and enjoyed a popular royal wedding. Like Diana and Fergie before them, Kate and Meghan were pretty much immediately pit against each other in the press. Unlike Diana and Fergie, Kate and Meghan never seemed to enjoy any kind of relationship behind the scenes. As usual, the heir's wife was propped up on the back of the spares. This time even more so due to racism towards Meghan. It's also important to remember that the Cambridges were going through a rough time in the press right before Meghan was publicly announced as Harry's girlfriend. Over the course of a few months, everything changed, and Will and Kate's reputation and standing in the UK would be rehabbed, all thanks to hating on Meghan, which must have been awkward at family dinner. The Diana connection continues on. A few months after their wedding, the Sussexes announced Meghan is pregnant right before going on their first major tour to Australia. We know the story. The tour is a smashing success. Tons of people show up across Oceania to see them. Like Princess Diana, in the eyes of the royal family and the press who cover them, Meghan has made the fatal error. She has outshined the order of succession. She is too popular for her supposed station. Harry himself has said that after this tour is when everything changed, like it did with his mother. The stage had been set for another showdown, the last of which ended with the death of Diana and the royal family getting the worst press and poll numbers in a generation, or really ever, I think. A stain that still remains almost 25 years later. The royal family learned absolutely nothing, and has spent that time trying to rewrite history to clean up for Charles, yet again. The press have also learned absolutely nothing, spending their time pointing fingers at others instead of regulating themselves. The only reason we have a different ending this time is because Harry is a bigger man than his father and was willing to walk away.